We will be joining them right after service, okay? We would like to reflect upon this text, and you will feel like the children's story has nothing to do with this, but you will soon realize the connection between the church resisting to the gates of hell and the children's story. So I would like to start with the children's story. And this is a story, in fact, it's two stories combined in one. The first story is about a man that was found guilty by a king. The king was saying that he did something wrong. The man tried to explain himself, but the king said, "No, I do believe you did something wrong." And he got arrested. And after being judged by the king, he got condemned to death. Death penalty. You know what's death penalty? It means that he is going to be killed. So this man was there, and he was quite sad because he felt it was not fair. But he was even more sad because he could not say farewell to his family. So one day, one friend came to visit him, and he was sharing this with his friend and saying, I don't feel this is fair, but I'm willing to take whatever consequence. But the problem is that I didn't have the chance to say bye to my family. And altogether, they came up with a plan. They said, what if, said the friend, what if I stay in your place? We talk to the king. He has a guarantee that you'll be back because I'm here. So they went to the king and told him the plan. And the king was laughing. So you think your friend will be back? He will not be back. You will just lose your place there. And he said, "King, we have a strong friendship, and I trust that he will be back." And the king said, "Well, okay, I have somebody to fulfill the penalty, so if you don't come back, your friend will die." So these young men went, and they assigned a date for the execution. And the date was approaching, and the king will come to these men and say, "You were such a fool. Now he's gone. He's gone. He's not going to be back, and you are going to die in his place. I will kill somebody, I'll tell you, and it will be you if he doesn't come back," which is most likely what's going to happen. And this man told the king, "You know what, king? We have a strong friendship, and I trust my friend will be back. And that's because I trust him that I also decided to take his place. But even if he wouldn't be back, I'll be glad to die in his place." The king was a little bit astonished with this. So the day arrived, and the time for the execution was getting closer and closer. And no signs of the man. And the king came to the prisoner that was there and said, "Okay, we are on time for the execution." So the soldiers were told to get this man, and they were bringing him to be executed at the square. Suddenly they saw the silhouette of a man walking, and they recognized he was his friend. And the king was like, "You came back?" He was astonished. He said, "You had the chance to leave. Who will going to get you? And he will die in your place. He's even willing to die for you. Why did you come back?" He said, "King, you know what? There are two important things in our lives and friendship. One is that we are so close and united, and we trust each other, and we trust our word. The second is that we are willing to die for each other. So it doesn't make a difference for us." The king was so impressed that he said, "You know what? I've never seen such a thing like this. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to forgive him, and he's not going to die." And the king was really impressed and wanted to know more about this kind of friendship. How can two people come so close, so united, so trustworthy in each other that they could be willing to do such a thing? Another very similar story is that of a soldier. They were in battle, two soldiers, among other soldiers, they were very close friends. And there was a heavy shooting in a situation, in a battlefield, and a lot of machine gunnery happening and everything. And the general just told them to retract, and everybody was running for their life and trying to go back to the fortress and to hide. And as they got there and they started seeing the soldiers who were there, they realized that one of them was missing. And when this young man looked around and noticed, he said, "It's my friend." And said, "I have to go back for him." And he came and asked permission to go back for him. And his superior said, "That is crazy. I mean, at this point, he's probably dead. It was such a heavy machinery. And at this point, he's dead, and you're going to risk your life. You're going to probably die. The two of you will die." And he said, "I understand that, but I just cannot live without it. I just cannot live with the thought of leaving my friend there. I know he will do the same thing for me, and I want to do that." And he said, "I'm going to grant you this permission, but this is foolishness." This young man went out, and it was really a heavy gunfire all around, and the machine guns were ringing all throughout the place. But this man went, and a long time passed, and no signs of him. And now this high patent was starting to be concerned and say, "Okay, and now I lost instead of 1, 2 soldiers." But in the meanwhile, he saw this man coming. He was all bloody. He was all dirty. He was really burned out, and he was tired. And he came. And the man said, "Oh, why did I tell you? See, you came back by yourself, and you risked to die. You could have died just trying to do that. And you were not able to rescue him." He said, "No, yeah, in fact, you were half right." And say, "He was dead, right? Did you find him at any time?" He said, "No, I found him, but he was not dead." And he said, but how come he was not dead?" He said, "No." And you know what? The good thing was that as I got there, he was heavily wounded, and he was not really in a chance to survive. But I arrived on time to hear him saying, "I knew you would come for me," and died at peace. Let me ask you this. Imagine this scenery, Jesus at the cross. Imagine Jesus in heaven. Everything is perfect. Everything is smooth. Everything is good. And then he decides to come down to the battlefield where heavy machine guns are happening, because he's coming there for you. Can you imagine yourself nearby at the feet of the cross, looking at Jesus and feeling, "I knew you would come for me"? Now, what do you feel when you think about this? And what do you feel if I would tell you that we are in a battlefield? Satan and sin are shooting heavy artillery. And this artillery is getting all over, killing people. Many are dying for good, forever. Could Jesus trust us that other people will say, "Wow, I'm amazed that you came for me. I'm amazed that you came out of your comfort zone through all these troubles just because of me." And then you could tell them, "You know what? This is nothing, because I feel so encouraged, so enthusiastic for what Jesus did for me, that He came for me also, that I will be willing to do this for you." True friendship, trustworthy friendship. I would like you to reflect upon this. We all like to read this text, and I'm not going to even enter the turmoil that is about the fact that people say that Peter was established then as the leader of the church. People are not getting the point here. Petrus, was meaning a little stone. And Jesus is talking to this little stone and he's telling him, you are just a little stone. But don't worry, because I'm not going to build my church upon a little stone. I'm going to build my church upon a big rock. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And we think that, oh yes, we don't have to worry, the church will win because the church is established upon the big rock. But when Jesus is saying, I'm a big rock and you are a little stone, is saying more than just that. It's saying, yes, I'm a big rock and the church will be established upon this big rock, but I'm making myself depending on little stones to cooperate with me. We are stones for the temple of God. We are to be shapen up. But I want you to understand this text, in fact, in the King James, he has a little mistake there because it says, whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. And if you read the original, or if you get an interlinear Bible, you will say that it says, whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth has been bound in heaven. The connection starts there. You know, whatever happens in heaven, there's a repercussion on earth. When Jesus was anointed in heaven, the Holy Spirit was bestowed upon earth with the Pentecost moment. So whatever happens, I want you to realize that our high priest is interceding in heaven for us. If this is being connected in heaven, intercession should be happening down here on earth for others. We are the little stones that are to mirror, to reflect the big rock. So whatever the big rock is doing there, striving to save souls and intercede with God for them, this is what we should be doing down here. I want you to realize that the church will not prevail just by hazard. The gates of hell will not prevail against the church just by hazard. We are God's hands. We are God's feet. Some people, I saw this cartoon one day where this man was begging for food, saying, we had a little card saying, I need food. And this other man was having a big cup with some drink and a big sandwich in his hand. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to pray for you. You see, sometimes we want to be too spiritualized to the community. People need more than prayer. The inspiration says that he that only pray will soon cease doing it. Prayer without actions is also dead. And I want you to realize, what are we doing beside praying for the people around us? I want you to realize that as a church, a person that is going to die, before that person dies, usually that person gets sick. So as a church, our churches are suffering of a disease that is a deadly virus disease. It is called Churchillitis. I don't know if you are able to see from there. If you want to see, feel free. Either ways. Churchillitis. And I will explain a little bit about what this disease means. Okay? So, if you consider that the church is the body of Christ, we are those little components that will form the body of Christ. Depending on how we are, so is the health of Christ. If we are a church that is sick, we are forming a sick body for Jesus. If we are not spiritually healthy, Jesus in His church as a body will not be spiritually well. And if we die, Jesus on earth as a body will die also. So it will be good to have a diagnosis of how is Jesus' health doing in the body, in the church. So let's have a little church health checkup. I want us to realize how it has developed. If we go back on time to the 1900s, we had in U.S. 27 churches for each 10,000 people. That is the 1900s. Okay? If we go to the 1950s, we see that this number is going down. 17 churches for every 10,000 people. If we keep moving on time and we go to the 90s, we see that the number went down to 11 churches for every 10,000 people. So this is meaning that our influence, our representation, our presence in the church, in the community, in the world is reducing, which means that our influence will be also reducing. So we have to realize those things as we think about the health of our church. I want you to realize this. Even with these numbers being so low, this is not telling us everything. 50% of the congregations, Christian congregations, are plateauing or declining. You know, if you read the statistics, the growing statistics, you will see the amount of churches that are closed in U.S. every week, every month. It's alarming, the amount of churches that are closing. People are really not growing in Christianity, although we see Christianity apparently growing. Look, only 2% are growing, 2% of those churches are growing 5% or less for 3 years consecutively. Do you see the scenario here? Churchillitis. We are suffering from a disease. I want you to realize what I mean. Statistics show that a 3-year-old church wins about 10 people per 100 members a year. Interestingly, it's showing that a church that is between 3 years old or 15 years old wins only half of that, 5 people per 100 members a year. And a church that is 15 years old or more wins only 3 people per 100 members a year. Our church is about 10 years old. It will be interesting to see how many are we winning per year. Because this is showing us if we are plateauing, if we are declining, if we are suffering with churchillitis. You know, every situation needs an explanation. So we have to ask ourselves, what is happening? Especially if we consider that many of the growth that are considering in the numbers comes from people that were grown in church, children of our church members. It's not really meaning that we went out for outreach. It's not really meaning that we were really out there doing some work, that we were really caring for the people like Jesus came for us. Many of those moments are just meaning that our numbers, people transferring, are children of church members. Interestingly, this should let us think. Of course, we don't want to go here for numbers only, but we should think about this problem. What is happening to the body of Christ? Which kind of viruses, which kind of diseases are getting us? I want you to see a little bit of what kind of things can happen with churchillitis. Okay? What kind of diseases can happen with churchillitis? When a church is inward focused instead of outreaching or outwarding, this church starts suffering from some diseases. You know, when you start wanting to bring things for yourself and you cease thinking about your mission, just imagine a bunch of soldiers in an army that start, instead of exercising every day, training every day, all they do is come together, fellowship, eating and drinking together, doing things together, watching things together, hearing things together, sitting all day long, and some bellies start growing up, and some little extra fat is growing on top of the muscles, and now suddenly there's a call for war. Some of them cannot even run. They start suffering. Some cannot carry all the heavy equipment that is to be carried, dragging all the things. How can they win? Somebody, and I never read that book, and I'm not even recommending, but I'm just saying somebody chose a title for a book saying The Fat Lady and the Kingdom, talking about how our churches are receiving, and not giving. When we are an inward church, our board meetings are concerned with tapestry, with problems, with little things, instead of being concerned with evangelism and outreach. When we are an inward church, our service is focusing on the members. Members are just coming to get what they want and not to give. We are not concerned with visitors. We are concerned with visitors just because we see in them a prospect of numbers. But we are not really concerned with people and their problems. We are not really concerned with their need to receive Christ in their lives. Many times when we do outreach focusing on how we can get this person to the club so that we can feel. And then when we see that he's giving us too much trouble, we bang our feet and say, okay, I tried, it doesn't work, let's go for the next one. You see, it's not really something that is moving us to care for the people. We are inward. You know, most of the statistics that show how people leave the church, in our church, most of the people don't leave the church because of doctrine problems or so. They leave the church because of problems with each other. Because none of us, or most of us, are not willing to suffer like Jesus was willing to suffer. We are not willing to bear for each other. If somebody does something to us, I'm not coming to this church any longer. People search for a church that will suit their needs. I shared this experience before, and I'm going to share again. My father was a coal porter, advanced in ground to a church plant process in a very hard location in southern Portugal. And one day, he's walking on the street, and he finds this sister from the church that has not been coming for a long time. And he says, hey, sister, how so good that I see you. We've been missing you. Where have you been? We have no track and everything. And she said, oh, no, I'm not going to the church again. And my father said, why? She said, because there's no love in church. And so I'm not coming because people don't really have love for us. And my father said, yeah, I agree with you. You agree with me? She said, yeah, of course. That's inevitable. I have to agree. That's the truth. And she said, so why do you keep going to church there? And say, because I found out why there's no love in church. And say, why? He said, because everybody is coming to get and nobody's coming to give. So when people come to get, there's no love there because nobody gave. So I'm coming to give so that when people come to get, they can find some. And he said, why don't you join me and start coming to give so that others might find love when they some? If there's no love in church, it's because I'm not loving. If there's no love in church, there's a reason for me not to leave. There's a reason for me to stay and be somebody that will show them what love is. But as I'm seeking for my own needs, if I'm not treated the way I want, the way I deserve, we forgot we don't deserve a thing. What we deserved was what? Death. So whatever we get is already a gain. Look at an inward church problems and diseases. They have arthritis of the soul. You know, arthritis, it's preventing you from moving. You cannot move that fast. So a church that is inward is not a fast church. It's not a movement. We were not called to be a stagnant denomination. We were called to be a movement. Active. With arthritis, there's no movement. You see, when we are an inward church instead of an outward church, we have a clogged arteries to the heart. This is critical. You can have a stroke. You can have a problem because it's like the circulation of the blood that is taking food to the cells is not working. So members are not fed. People are not fed spiritually. The community is not reached out for. And you can have a stroke. And sometimes some churches collapse. And we don't know why they collapse. They collapse because they were clogged in their arteries. No movement with the arthritis. And all these things are happening. We have a malignancy, a cancer of the spirit. Then when a church is not active, one thing I learned when I was still studying theology was a sentence that I never forgot. Somebody told me, if you plan to be a pastor, keep this in mind. Running horses cannot buck. When we are not moving, when we're not doing things, then we start being concerned about the problems with others. Remember what, when they were building the temple, what Nehemiah told them, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I don't have time to come and talk to you. I don't have time to talk. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of time to talk, especially to talk about the problems, especially to talk about the defects, the things that are not working. You know, in Portugal they have a saying, they say, it's easier to talk about bullfight than to be in the arena. You know, you see these people that are sports watchers. They know everything about sport except sporting. So they know all the problems, where the problems are. When we are doing nothing, we can locate all the problems. You know, this lady came to church and the pastor was preaching about talents. And he was saying, we all have a talent. You have to put your talents to work. You have to find out what is your talent. And this lady at the end came to the pastor and said, Pastor, I really enjoy your sermon, but unfortunately, I found out I have no talent. And the pastor said, this cannot be, sister. You have to get involved. You have to do something. We all have at least one talent. You have to find out what is your talent. Go home and try to find out your talent. And then you will find it and you start seeing that you have a talent. So this lady went home and some weeks passed. And then she came to the pastor. Pastor, you were right. You were right. I have a talent afterward. He said, I told you, we all have a talent, at least one. And what is your talent? And she said, I have the talent of criticism. I can see when something is wrong. And I can locate right on the spot. Sometimes people are not seeing it, but I see it. And the pastor said, yeah, interesting. So you found your talent. You remember the parable I told? And he said, yes, I remember. So do like the one that had only one talent. Bury it. So if this is the only thing that you can do to contribute with church, bury it. You know, we don't need to focus on the problems, but on the solutions. It's not hard to find problems. Everybody can do that. The hard thing is to find solutions. Malignancy of the spirit, that's what starts happening when we are not outwarding, but inwarding. We have a retardation of the real, genuine spiritual growth. We start not growing. We start shrinking. Look, I want you to realize this very critically. There is no such a thing as one thing without another. It's like some things come together. You cannot have one and not have the other. I want you to realize this. I can give you the PowerPoint, sister. I want you to realize this. In fact, they have it already there. If you ask, they will give it to you. I want you to realize this. Sometimes we want all the benefits of Christianity, but none of the responsibilities. We want church to work fine. I don't want to come here and somebody's late, or nobody for the Sabbath school, or nobody. But then when I'm asked to do something, oh, no, I cannot. I'm too busy. So nobody can be busy but I. Everything has to work in church. I heard the story of a pastor that one day somebody from the membership came to him and say, it was somebody in an office, Pastor, we don't have this person, we don't have this person. What are we going to do? We're not going to do anything. They say, but how are we going to have those things working? You say, we're not going to have them working. And what if the people ask? You say, we don't have anyone. Tell them. We have to stop trying to make it up. Okay. If we don't have it, we don't have it. So when people come and say, why don't we have this office of the church working? Because we don't have anyone. So it's weird because I came to realize that God is telling a lot of people that they should not get involved in offices. It's weird. It seems like God is killing His own body, right? I want you to realize this. One thing will show another. Some people say we are not saved by works. And that's true. You see, the point is not that we have to judge to see works. And I tell these people, some people may show works and not be really converted. But it is impossible to be converted and not show works. So if you don't show works, if you show works, I cannot know for sure that you are converted. But if you don't show works, I know for sure you're not converted. Because it's impossible to be converted and not show works. I want to tell you something. We cannot measure a church. A church may be growing and not be healthy. Maybe just numbers or dumping people on the baptistry. But if a church is not growing, I know this church is not healthy. Are you with me? Do I have to repeat it? If I take my child to the doctor and the doctor say, oh yeah, it's been 3 years that your children are not growing, but don't worry. They are healthy. I say you're a liar. How come a child is supposed to grow? If my child is not growing, don't come and tell me he's healthy. Some people confuse, yes, we're not growing because this community is hard. We're not growing because people don't accept the gospel. We know that in the last days will we find faith on earth. We are not growing because we're not healthy. Because there's something we need to check that is not working. Our body is not functioning right. And we have to find out where we are having a retardation of spiritual growth. Remember, the rich man that came to Jesus and Laodicean, you see, I'm not going to dig into that because it will be another sermon by itself. If you make a comparison between the rich man, the rich young man, and Laodicea, you will see that it's the same story with different characters' names. It's the same story. This man was coming to Jesus. He felt something was not working, something is not right. And we feel as Laodiceans, something is not right. Our church, something is not right. I can tell, but I cannot tell what. But then Jesus is asking him, so what are you doing? First, look at the detail of what Jesus asked. He says, good master. And Jesus asking him, why do you call me good? What is the kind of goodness you're seeing? The goodness he was seeing is that he was all solid with doctrine. But Jesus wanted to call his attention for another goodness in the ministry of Jesus, which was an outgoing goodness, always caring for the people. His goodness was inward. He was trying to be a good guy, trying to keep all the reforms. When Jesus asked him, do you keep the law? He said, oh, all the reforms since I was born. Health reform, food reform, dress reform, all the reforms, I keep them. So go and show this in the community. What? This will take me out of my comfort zone. If I have to go, how will I work to all the things? I cannot go. I have to pray here for my character building. I have to pray for victory over sin. And Jesus is trying to tell him, look, you can strive for all those things on your character building, but if you only focus on your character building, your victory over sin, you will never accomplish. You'll be like a doctor. I've shared this before. Like a doctor that wants to study to be the perfect and good doctor, but never goes to the patients. You can study as much as you want. If you don't go and take care of people, you will never be a good doctor. We can know all present truth. We can know all things if we don't go and practice this. So Jesus is asking him, why are you calling me good? Is because I keep the commandments in theory and know all of these doctrines? Or is because you're seeing me reflecting the character of Jesus, that is love, outgoing love for the people? Why are you calling me good? Stop and think about that. And then Jesus is presenting to him the kind of church that no church wants to be when you want to be a church club. The discomfort, the uncomfortable situation of having to go out and being active for others. How would I find time in my schedule to take care of other people in my community? Look, Jesus, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep taking care of myself, and then I'll save 2 hours a week for others. And Jesus said, okay, if that's what you want to do, you can do it. You just go nowhere and grow nowhere. Because when you're not taking care of others, there's no reason for me to take care of you. You are already taking care of yourself. There's a bumper sticker that I saw in Brazil when we were there as missionaries that was saying, I'm going to take care of my health because I have enough people taking care of my life already. So sometimes we are too concerned on taking care of what Jesus didn't commit us to do. What about taking care of others? You know, I want us to realize and see that if we're not growing, we are probably will health problems, serious health problems. Some signs will show, and we preached about that in the past. I'm not going back into this. The Sabbath school is the heart of the church. What would you feel if your heart was pumping like this? Boom, 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 boom. And somebody asks you, how are you doing? You say, well, my heart is pumping a little bit slow, but I'm okay. Would you be concerned if your heart was pumping like this? So we see our Sabbath school almost not pumping, going almost to, if the nurse will have to come here, she will have to be searching for the pulse. You see, it says that the prayer meeting is as the pulse of the body. We are almost with no pulse. If you find somebody, if you are in the medical field and you find somebody laying on the floor and you try to get the pulse and there's no pulse, you will say, okay, this guy will be okay. He will wake up soon. Let's go. What will you do? There's a serious problem. There is a serious problem. Yesterday, I was at the airport. And I'm there waiting for Joel that is finished first, and I'm waiting there. And there's a young man that came with a little carry-on, and he's doing his own business. And then he looks at me, and he points at one of the cabins, and he said, is he okay? And when I look, there's a man on the floor. You can see from the bottom, there's a man on the floor like this, and blood here and everything. And I said, oh, I didn't even see. I said, are you okay, sir? And he said, I'm okay. And I could say, okay. If you're okay, okay, okay. He said he's okay. Don't worry. Is this what I'm going to do? If you are laying on the floor and bleeding, you can tell me as much as you want you're okay. Do I know you're not okay? Of course. You see, sometimes we see our church with real problems, and we want to tell ourselves that we are okay. That is just the environment, it's just the scenario around, it's just the world. You know, this young man was not noticing one thing. You can think you're good upon God, upward religion. But what will really say how good you are with upward religion is the horizontal religion. The way you care for others is what is really telling you how you care for God. If you don't see a care for others, don't fool yourself like the young man thinking you're rich and your church is okay. You're not okay. You know, when they asked the apostles, we don't want you guys to keep preaching this. They say, we can't help it. He's stronger than us. We can keep our mouth shut. We have to go. If you are able to keep your mouth shut, something is not right. If we are able to be happy in coming to church and not really be overflowing for the community, don't let us fool ourselves. We are deeply sick, and we need to do something about it. So I want us to understand and ask ourselves, what is the solution for these viruses, for this Churchillitis that got us, for these diseases that we can't move, we are clogged, we are with arthritis. What is the solution? We have to ask ourselves. And I think every pastor asks himself this question. What else can I do? to try to wake up people, to try to, and sometimes if we are concerned with the church, we ask ourselves also, what can we do? What else can we do for our church to be healthy, for our church to grow? I want us to realize some of the solutions that are connected. I want us to go back and understand conversion factors. Some churches, they have tried a solution. They say, oh, you know, the problem is that the church service is very boring. So we're going to have a happy, clappy worship service. And so some churches, I've been visiting some churches that the song service is about 45 minutes and then the sermon is 15 minutes. You know, one day I was assigned to preach in a church when we were in Brazil. The first year we preached in more than 100 churches in the area where we were. Where in first 2 years or so. And I was sitting in a church and the service is going and music and announcements and this and that and this and those. And the guy that is next to me, one of the elders, he turns to me, he says, oh, I'm concerned with time. You see, it's really, really late. Do you think you can shorten up a little bit your sermon so that we could not, we wanted to do missionary work, he was saying, on the afternoon. I said, look, this sermon took me some time to prepare and prayer and everything, so I really not be able to shorten this for 50 minutes. But I don't mind if you want to go ahead and preach something in 50 minutes, I'll be okay with it. Oh, no, you preach your time. So when I got there and I started my sermon, I said, I have good news and bad news. And everybody's looking at me and I say, you know, the good news is that it's already noon. The bad, 2 minutes to noon. The bad news is that I'm not going to preach in 2 minutes. So if you don't want to, if you have a lot of business for your Sabbath, go ahead and do it. If you leave, I will not be offended, but I will preach what the Lord assigned me to preach. I want us to understand this. We want to turn church experience into a comfortable, suitable experience. Sometimes we want to use nice ways to attract the people to church. And we say, oh, if we say this, if we do that, they will not be converted. They will not come. You know, I wonder if I had to do outreach in the Middle Ages when the Inquisition was going, what kind of things could I use to make the gospel more palatable for you to come and be baptized knowing that you can die or be condemned to death in the next month or so? How can you do evangelism? And you know what? The church never grew as much as in those days. Because the problem is not to make things easy for the people. The problem is to make people see that things are not easy, even if they look like. This is a warfare. You cannot go to a warfare and complain with the general and say, where's the couch? These chairs are too hard. We have to sleep in the bunkers? You see, some people come to church and they think this is a concert. So if the music is not good, if the program is not suitable, they don't like it, I will not come here any longer. You are a soldier. I've never seen soldiers complaining about the conditions. Oh, this food in a can. But we want a different experience. There's no way that the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church if we don't take care of understanding what we were called for. Interestingly, statistics show that people come to church first because of the pastor and his preaching. 90% of the people. The preaching that is there, pastor, the elders, the message is what really bringing churches to grow. This is statistics showing the difference between churches who grow and churches that not grow. The second reason is doctrines. 88% of the people say they came to church because of doctrines. You know, the truth of the matter is that some of the religions that are growing the most are the ones that present to the people more hardships. Muslims, they don't try to make it swallowable for you. This is the message. That's what our prophet left for us, and if you want, you take it. If you don't want, you'll be lost. It's like going to the doctor, and the doctor says, you know what, you are with a serious problem. I would have to prescribe a lot of medicine for you, but I've seen this medicine, and they are not tasty at all, so just forget about it. Go your way. Sin is a terrible, deadly disease. Some people are willing to do whatever when they get cancer. But they don't understand they have a cancer of the soul. People have a spiritual problem, and they need a medicine that is not palatable at all, but is more palatable than dying. You know, only 11% of the people really come to church because of the music style and worship. Did you know this? So many times we are trying to solve our problem the wrong way. We think, you know, the reason why we are losing the youth is because we don't present things that are good for them. We need to have more programs in church. You know what? I was a worldly church comer once. And you know, when you had to be there at the AY program, AY, is that what you say? You had to be there. I was just waiting for the sunset. And this program will never compete with what I was going to do next. So the bad thing of these programs is that they were not feeding those that were interested in religion and not supplying for those that were not interested in religion. And I want to tell you, if you want to try to provide alternatives for the youth, you will get in trouble. There's no alternative for you to tell somebody that is addicted to cocaine, oh, come to church, we have holy cocaine. It will be, oh, it's totally different. It tastes the same, it will give you the same impressions, but it's not harmful. There's no such a thing. You know, when you provide the person with a healthy life that it doesn't need to get a refuge in intoxicated things, that person will not need cocaine. And this is the point where you have to get, is to get to the youth what the world cannot give them. These satisfactions that only the gospel can give them. And then they will not need the palatable things of the world. When you are satisfied with Christ, you don't need the other things. When you're empty with Christ, you can keep swallowing all those things. They will never fill you up. I remember when I was going to the nightclubs and everything, there was always this emptiness, this eagerness for more pleasure. It's like cotton candy. The more you bite, the less you feel it. It goes, it disappears, it melts right away. That's these kind of things that we're trying to offer people. Give them apples, not cotton candy. I want us to realize, if we want to know how to have our church healthy, we have to go back to the early church. Brother Barnes just said that in the Sabbath school. And I think you mentioned also something in your text. We have to see, what were they doing? Because they were growing. And then we have to start doing the same. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. If it was working for them, it can work. Oh, times have changed. People have not changed. And the devil is using exactly the same techniques because he noticed people didn't change. We are trying to change, and then we get nothing. You see, they say, don't change a winning team. If the gospel by Jesus, with Jesus was winning, let's go back to that original model. And it says in Acts chapter 2, verses 41 and 42, then they that gladly received his word. First thing, we are not here for those who don't receive the word gladly. If you don't like the gospel, it's because the life you have is offering you all you need. When you're dying, come to us. You see, you don't go to a doctor goes to a healthy person and said, you will have to cut this and this and this in your diet. And the person said, no way, I like those things. But when the person is desperate and the doctor said, now, are you willing to cut this and this? And say, whatever you do, I don't want to die. You see, first thing, people have to gladly receive the gospel. You will only receive the gospel gladly if you realize your condition. But when you come to Evangelist Series and I tell you, you are the most wonderful thing in the world. God loves you. It's just half the truth. You know, I might be the most, which I'm not, but I might be the most wonderful thing in my family. But if I'm sick, I'm sick. I will not be less beautiful or less cute because I'm sick, but I'm sick. And my family cannot just keep patting me and say, oh, I don't care, you have cancer. We still love you because you're beautiful. If you love me, do something for my problem. If people come to church, don't just tell them they are beautiful. Do something for their disease. They are dying with sin. Do you see? We want people to come to conversion without telling them and confronting them with how bad they are. You don't feel the need for conversion if you feel you're good. So I shared this experience before. It's like the butterflies, when they are coming out of the cocoon, they have to go through a lot of motions and efforts, and it's a painful process. And this young person decided, oh, let me help the butterfly, and cut the cocoon for the butterfly to come out. But the problem is that in the process of coming out, the butterfly has to go through so many motions. That's what strengthens her wings. Without that motion, the wings will be too weak, and this butterfly will never fly. This is what is happening with Christianity. We try to make conversion so easy for people that they will never really get converted, and they are weak Christians. The second thing they said, they were baptized, and it says, look, in the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. We always read this and we don't get the point here of the message. We're going to do evangelism this summer or this spring, whatever. And we spread 10,000 pamphlets and flyers to invite the people. But we know they won't come because this never works. You know? And you invite all these people and then somebody comes, but your church only takes 50 people. Oh yeah, but you know, people never come. Why are you sending pamphlets then? The point is that we are not ready for the miracle. We pray for the Holy Spirit, but we are not ready for it to come. You see, we pray for miracles. You know, it's like this story that this town was suffering with drought. And so they started praying, and they said, we are going to have a rally. Everybody is going to come to the church, and we are going to pray for rain, and the Lord will answer our prayers. And everybody was assigned in that day to come. And we see all the people coming and rallying to the church, but only a little girl was bringing an umbrella. Because nobody was really expecting it to rain. We are just doing the motions, fulfilling the formalities. We are not really any longer believing that the Lord will make us grow, that the Lord will make us reach the community. We are not really ready for that. You see, they were ready for that. The Lord, well, as much as they could, they were believing, they were doing it because they were so thrilled with the gospel they had received that they are trusting others will feel the same. I want to tell you something. When I hear people saying, oh, this won't work because people don't like that, they don't like this, we have to change the music because people don't like this. What they are really saying is, I am not converted and I don't like that. When you are converted and you know how precious it was, your conversion experience, you trust that others will be dying for it. They will be saying, oh man, I want this. And we see many revealed texts where we hear people saying, you knew this and you didn't tell us. You know, people don't know what they need. They don't know the effect it will have on them. And if we don't know it also, we won't be able to tell them. You see? And look at this now. That's the part that we need to pay attention. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship and in breaking of bread and in prayers. If you notice well, there are three things here, and interestingly, those are the three things you find in the sanctuary. Steadfastly in doctrine, and in fellowship in breaking the bread together, and in prayers. Three things that will make our church grow. First, when you enter the holy place, the growth tripod is here. If you want your church to grow, That's where the recipe is. The first thing you see when you enter, your eyes bump on the altar of incense. So although it's put last, it doesn't mean that it is in sequence. Prayer must be there constantly. You know why people pray little? They say, oh, I wish I could pray more. I need to pray more. We really pray little because we trust ourselves. So we only pray when we see we cannot take care of the situation. Then we pray desperately. So the other times we are not praying because saying, I can handle it. Yeah, no. We repeat, without me ye can do nothing. But in our mind we believe, without me I cannot do too much. I can only do some. So we keep doing the some. If we really realize the spiritual battle we are involved with, and how Satan hates us, and how he'll bring us down, and how we don't have the power to overcome, for the gates of hell not to prevail against us, we would pray and pray and pray desperately. But we only pray when things are really critical and there's nothing we can do. I want you to realize another thing here. Fellowship and breaking the bread. A church that doesn't come together, and I invite you for our picnic on Labor Day. We're going to have this labor of love. We're going to come together for a picnic as a church. A church that is not in fellowship together. It will be at the Barnes place, by the way, which this breaking bread was happening in each other's house. People were communing with each other in each other's house. A church that is not in fellowship is not in real love. You know, I found out this in my life. If we just come together on Sabbath, then when problems come, you are just another person. But if I'm there with you throughout the week, when problems come, you are my friend. I know you. You know, I'm going to give you an example. Have you seen people talking about drug addicts? They say, oh, those druggies. Oh, those this and that. But have you seen the same people talking about their children when they are with a drug problem? Oh, you're such a good boy, but bad company. Do you see how it changes? It's the same person. It's the same problem. But now they have an emotional attachment. If you don't have an emotional attachment in church, when something happens, righteousness. But then when you have an emotional attachment, righteousness will be applied with love. You feel like, yeah. You find excuses sometimes, and you say, well, yeah, he did that, but probably it doesn't mean it. You see, that's when we care for each other. If we are not in fellowship, we will not care for each other. We'll just be. I want you to understand this. If you see a church that is not in fellowship, that people don't visit each other, that people are not in communion with each other, trust me, that church has a lot of problems happening. If you see a church where people are always doing these kind of things, they have problems, but they are always overcoming them. You know, I have a lot of problems with my wife because she doesn't understand that I'm right. You see? She has a lot of problems with me because I think I'm right. But still, sometimes we go to rough moments with rough feathers, and but then you think, I love this cutie, you know. Okay, I'm going to forgive this thing, but if she does it again, you see, we are always willing to forgive because we care for each other, we live with each other, we are taking care of each other. There's a communion there. This is very important for the church to grow. And then, doctrine. You see, a church cannot grow if it's only fellowship, fellowship, fellowship. Some people will tell you that what will bring people to church is relationship. That's true. But what will keep people in church is not only relationship. If they don't have doctrine, they will not stay. Even if they don't have doctrine, they will not come for the right reasons. You see, a lot of people are married for the wrong reasons. I know this goes a little bit sideways. Some people, they want a faithful husband, but they attract the husband by physical arguments. If you attract a husband with physical arguments, that's the kind of husband you're going to have. You know, the kind of tools you use to fish determines the kind of fish you will get. So, If we want to have people that are solid in the doctrine, we cannot only attract them with wishy-washy things. They have to be attracted by solid doctrine, loving doctrine. By the way, doctrine and Jesus are not two different things, are the same thing. And sometimes we speak like, I want to walk, but I want to walk only on my left leg. Those two legs are part of the same body. I walk with both of them. And it's the same thing with love and justice, mercy and law. So here is the recipe if we want to grow as a church. But I want to bring this home to a serious thing that we have to understand. Serious thing. And even if you would have missed all that I've said until now, please don't miss this. I want you to understand the importance of this one. You know? We are the light of the world. We are the salt of the world. Have you tried salty food? How do you feel about it? Or food that is without salt at all? Are we discussing the community by being too salty or not salty at all? When we approach them, are they suffering with big problems, but we are just making them swallow the doctrine and having them receive what we have to tell them? Or are we not even there for their problems, but then we want them to listen to us? Let me pick Sister Sandra here. Let's say I come, Sister Sandra, I'm really desperate. Could I borrow from you $10,000? Or let's make it easier, Sister Sandra, for you to be convinced with this. I say, can you give me $1,000? And she said, well, how do you need $1,000 for? And you see, if somebody in the street comes and asks you, can you give me $1,000? What do you say? Go work. Right? We just, $1,000? I don't know you. But let's say that all throughout those years, I've been supporting Sister Sandra with several things. And this is not a true story, okay? Sister Sharon, just picking on you, okay? This never happened. I'm just picking an example. Let's say that here and there, I gave it $50,000 here, $50,000 there. I don't even have that money to give, so you see, it's not a real story. It's not a real story. No, now I come to her and say, Sister, could I borrow $1,000? $1,000 is quite some money. Do you think Sister Sandra will say, what? $1,000? Or she will think, man, this guy was there for me all the time. I remember 2 years ago he gave me $50,000. Last year he gave me $50,000. This last month, $20,000. I mean, what is $1,000 for him? Even if I don't have that money now, I'm going to make my best to find that money, right? You know, if people feel that you really care for them, they will do whatever to give back. You know, the community is not really caring about your gospel because they don't really feel you care for them. You see, you're going there just with your theory for your club, thinking you're the right guy, but you were never there when they needed you. When the fire happened there, you were not there. When the flood happened there, you were not there. When people were facing problems with drugs, with addictions, you were not there. When they needed food, you were not there. And now you just come and say, come to my church. We have the love of Jesus in our heart. Who are you? I don't know you. You know, that's why Jesus, they told him, he preached it with authority. People will hear and say, oh, this is not just talk. He did more than what he preached there. You see, the community will do anything, even coming to your church evangelism, even not agreeing with you or not being from your religion. They will come if they feel you really care for them. I'm not saying they feel that if you have a plastic smile, I love you. If they feel you really care for them. You see, you cannot resist love. Some of them will say, oh, you know what, I don't agree with what they say in doctrine, but they are wonderful people. So they forget about doctrine. They forget about differences. I want us to realize this. We are the little stones that the big rock is needing to not let the gates of hell prevail against the sin that is overtaking the world. The people that are dying for problems. We are to seek for the lost. Jesus said, as the Father sent me, so I sent you. Just imagine Jesus coming from heaven, sitting down, watching TV. Sitting down, reading, or just staying just aside for devotional all day long and reading and knowing all about the doctrine, but never going for the people. Jesus said, as the Father sent me, so I sent you. You see, did you like what I did for you? Go and do it for others, please. I'm not here any longer, but you are. You can do something. Help them. And for you to not be alone, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit with you always. He will be with you until the end of time as you do the mission. I would like us to really reflect about this. And I would like to close with a story. It's a story that you find in Testimonies, Volume 4, page 319. And I'm going to read just parts of it, but it says like this: a man journeying on a winter's day through the deep drifted snow became benumbed by the cold. And as he was about to give up the struggle for life, he heard the moans of a brother traveler who was perishing with cold. His humanity was aroused to rescue him. He shifted the ice-clad limbs of the man and bore him in sympathizing arms to a place of safety. The truth flashed home to him that in saving his neighbor, he had saved himself also. His earnest efforts quickened the blood which was freezing in his own veins and created a healthful warmth in the extremities of the body. Brothers and sisters, the truth of the matter is that we are not alive as churches because we are not carrying life to others. You know, some people have to be dragged to do evangelism because they think evangelism is a duty for others. They don't realize that evangelism is also a privilege for me. I don't do evangelism because of others only. I do evangelism because I need it. I don't take the gospel because of others only. I take the gospel because I need it. I don't care for others because of others only. I care for others because I need it. If I'm not involved in service, in mission, you know, when people are depressed, the medicine that you can give them is go and do something for others. When you go and do something for others, you forget about yourself and you start being alive. I don't know anybody that's saying, man, I'm overweight. Could you go to the gym for me? Do you know anybody that will do that? Oh man, if you would go, are you going faithfully to the gym? Because I need to lose weight. Can you lose and get benefits of what others are doing? You see, we are not getting the benefits because we are not doing it. And I want us to realize this. I want us to realize what is saying in Isaiah 58. If you could open there, I could tell you this is something that is really my heart is feeling about this. He said, if you go Isaiah 58 on verse 8. So if you see Isaiah 58 on verse 3 starts saying, people are complaining, Lord, why are we doing all you told us to do and our church is not growing? Say, wherefore have we fasted, say they, and thou seest not? You said the church will prevail, but we see look at the struggles. We are not growing. We do evangelism, nobody comes. We are doing all you told us. And Jesus is saying, is this the church that I wanted to start? Is this what I told you to do? Is just coming on the Sabbath, studying the Sabbath school, and doing all those things? Is this what? Do you think I'm going to be happy just because you do good church? You have a good service? This is not why I started the church for. I started the church. Isn't this the fastening that I asked? That you may care for the people. That you may be there for them as I am there for you. That they may say, whoa, I'm so glad you came. That they may look at you and say, I knew you would come because I know your church. I know your church is a relevant church. I know your church is there for the community. I know you love us. We know in last Sabbath we have the testimony of the Mac feeders. They're in the district programs. And they say they were for 5 years just serving the community. And then they started this project for the community, this restaurant. And after a while, her father died. And she didn't spend a penny because everybody in the community was offering something. They say, oh no, we will help you with this. They were there for them because all throughout this time, they were taking care of the community. You see, I want us to realize Jesus is telling us, this is not why I started church. Don't get me wrong. Jesus told the disciples, you see what the Pharisees are doing? He didn't say, don't do that. He said, do that, but also do this. You see, James saying that the true religion is not only to be undefiled in the world, but to take care of those in need. You see, right leg, left leg, walk together. Doctrine, taking care. Doctrine, taking care. Doctrine, love. That's the way we can walk. A church cannot move with only one leg, limping. It's not the same thing. I want you to realize what he's saying there in verse 8. He's saying, then shall thy light break forth as the morning. Then you shall shine in the community. Everybody will see. And thine health shall spring forth speedily. Then you'll be a healthy church and a healthy body. And thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. Then your reputation as a church, everybody will know. I said this and I say it again. I never saw Jesus spreading tracts. Please come to the Sermon of the Mountain. The people were there. A lot of people. Why? They found somebody that cared for them, that has something that they could benefit. They needed that. Jesus had, in fact, to find ways to accommodate all the people. If we are having to call the people, something is not right. Something is not right. They should look at us and see, I want this. I want that they have. They should look at us and know us. They should come after us, chase us, and beg us to go and be with them and do something for them. We have to realize the story of the man in the snow. We have to be an outward church. We have to know that if we don't do this, we will not be healthy. We will not be well. We will not shine. We cannot look only at the first part of Isaiah 58. We have to put it all together. We have to realize, I want to invite us in Camden and wherever we are to be an outward church. A church that is focusing, that exists. Our reason for existence is our mission in the world. It's not for ourselves. You know, some people say, oh, you should come to church because of Jesus, not because of people. If it was only because of Jesus, you could stay at home. We have church because of people. The church exists because of the people and not the people because of the church. You see? So the reason why church exists is this. Is the same reason why Jesus came. I want us to realize this, and I want you to take this thought as you go home. If you want to have victory over sin and character building, the thing that is probably missing, you remember Jesus told the rich man, you lack one thing. You know, Martha and Mary, he said the same. She chose the best thing. Martha was all busy doing all church things that needed to be done. Mary was taking care of what was more important. Jesus as the center, the love as the center. I want us to realize this as you take this home. Please let it dawn to you that if something is wrong in our church, it is because something is wrong with our relationship with God. Keep this in mind. If our way to sell everything and give it to the poor is not really happening, that means that all the other commandments we think we are keeping, we are not really keeping them. If you don't have love for the people, don't fool yourself thinking you have love for present truth. If you're not active in serving the community, let us not fool ourselves thinking that we are active in studying or keeping the reforms. You remember the man that was forgiven by the king and went out and didn't forgive his brother. The reason why he was not forgiving his brother is because he was not realizing how much he was forgiven. You see, when the king showed him the death, and if you see the accounts and what that represents, he will take his entire lifetime and not pay that debt. He said, don't be upset, I'll pay you everything. He was not aware of how bad he was. You see, and when he went out, he was not merciful to others. If we are not taking care of saving others, we are not aware of the gift we have received, of how much the Lord has done for us. What we are really needing is to behold our God, to behold Jesus in His character, in His glory, to be filled up and behold our God and know how wonderful it is. This will thrill us, take us, move us to take care of others. I want us to realize this. We have a hymn that we would like to close with. It's called Behold Thy God, our God. That's all. Now, many times we sing in church just to sing. We are not really focusing that we are worshiping. This is a song that is really about adoration to God. And I want us to really grasp in the lyrics how great is our God and how desperate people outside are for Him, whether they know it or not.
Held the oceans in His hands, who has numbered every grain of sand. Kings and nations tremble at His voice, all creation rises to rejoice. Behold our God, seated on His throne. Come, let us adore Him. Behold our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore Him. Who has given counsel to the Lord?
Who can question any of His words? can teach the one who knows all things?
Who can fathom all his wondrous deeds? Behold our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him. Who has felt the will upon his hands, bearing all the guilt of sinful man?
God eternal, humble to the grave, Jesus Savior, risen now to reign.
Behold our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him.
You will reign
Let your glory fill the earth. 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 Our God, seated on his throne, come, let us adore him. Behold our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him.
As we sing our closing hymn all together as a church, that we may not be turning our back to our health problem, that we may be seeking for the healing that we are needing, that we may be willing to spend time beholding Jesus and the way He did ministry, that we may be little stones after the big rock, that our ministry as a church would be shaped after the ministry of Jesus in healing, teaching, and preaching to the needs of them around Him.
Let us stand. Our closing hymn is 522. My hope is built on nothing less.
My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest friend, but only on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. When darkness seems to veil His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every hard and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is
Let's remain standing for the benediction. It reads in Hebrews 13, verses 20 through 21. Now, the God of peace, that brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant, make you perfect in every good work to do his will, working in you that which is well-pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever. Amen. You may be seated for a moment of silent meditation, and upon dismissal, you will be ushered out. If you choose to stay inside, let it be for prayer and meditation.